All right, everyone, it's your boy Fernie here, back with another new Cryptids and Monsters video. This one is actually not based on any new suggestions, but is instead another entry within my Lumberjack Cryptid series. I realized I haven't done one of those videos in a while, so I thought I would introduce another one here. And when I was looking at the information associated with this particular cryptid, I found it so fascinating that I thought I would share it here. This is one creature, though, that you do not want to come across. It is very deadly. In fact, it's considered apparently the second most deadliest fearsome critter slash lumberjack cryptid out there. So you definitely want to avoid it. I'm going to provide all the information associated with it. In fact, you're looking at a representation of it now. It has a pretty unique name as well. It's known as the snow Wasset. Before I begin the video, though, let me remind everyone, if you haven't had a chance to see my playlist dedicated to lumberjack cryptids, it's there on my channel. You'll be able to see all the other videos that I have for this series, and that way you'll be able to catch up on some of the other past entries. So what is this snow Wasset? Well, again, it's found in the northern parts of either the United States, maybe even going into Canada as well. You would have to look at areas involving the Great Lakes and Hudson Bay. It's a very migratory animal, though, so it moves about in many locations, so there may be a chance that it has a lot more areas that it considers its home. First, though, let's talk about its physical characteristics. The problem, though, is there's very little to talk about, only because there's very little instances of people coming across it. Again, it's pretty deadly. You don't want to actually meet this creature at all. More on that here in just a moment. But the very few instances that people have seen it, and again, it's very, very brief, what it looks like is something along the lines of a wolf, like a white wolf, but something that has no legs, but it does have legs at certain points. Interesting stuff. More on that in a moment as well. But imagine that, something like the size of a wolf, but again, maybe more of a slithery body, but still has lots of fur, just like anything involving a wolf would be. And then that's the idea of what this creature is. And the regions, again, that I mentioned that it's found, it has a wide area, and the reason for this is because it migrates in so many places. The reason for that is because it all depends on the weather. What's interesting is that it's almost like a reversal of things. It actually hibernates during the warmest weather around it, and then when it gets much cooler, much colder, then that's when it comes out, and that's when it lives its normal life. So basically, whenever it starts to get warm, then it moves certain areas. When it starts to get cold, it moves to other areas. That gives you an idea of what it is. Now, as far as those legs that I was mentioning earlier, again, it has to do with where it moves, and then in particular how it attacks. This is how it goes. This is what makes it a very unique cryptid. During the summertime, it does have legs. It has regular legs. I imagine legs of a wolf, something along those lines. And so it runs about, moves about, uses those legs to basically be in its area, either hunting or moving from one location to another. But whenever the time comes of the year where the first snowstorm starts coming in, then it actually starts shedding its legs. Can you believe that? Very first time I've ever heard of something along those lines. You've heard of creatures shedding their fur, shedding their shells, like if they're aquatic type creatures like lobsters, etc. You've heard of snakes shedding their skin, but now here you have this creature actually shedding its legs. Fascinating stuff, right? The reason it does this is because now, with the snow in and presumably covering most of, if not all of the land, maybe being a few feet deep, it now uses its slithery-like body to basically move about underneath the snow. It's almost like if you would imagine a snake moving in the sand. That's how That's the picture that I got when I was reading this information. You could just imagine it doing the same, but this time doing it within the snow. And it's considered highly effective because of the fact that its white fur causes it to perfectly blend within the environment of the snow. And then it uses very little parts of its body above the snow. It's just basically moving about underneath the snow, especially when it detects its prey and somebody or something that it's moving towards, then it's basically dipping beneath the snow. And then by that point, the way it burrows, the way it travels, is too little, too late for whatever it's preying upon, because this person or this animal, whatever it is that it's its target, will essentially have the surprise of its life whenever the snow wasset comes about from underneath them, snatches them, and then presumably kills them to eat them as food afterward. And it's a very, very effective way of doing so. According to some ancient tales involving woodsmen, this is their quote: "The tragedies of the far north are more numerous beneath the crusted snow than above it." The impression I got from that saying is that there's far more danger beneath the snow, i.e. the snow wasset, than anything above it. And so that's essentially the fear that they had with regards to it. But yeah, that's essentially what the animal would do. It would pull down anything that it catches upon and then just eat it afterwards. And apparently this creature has to do this multiple times because it has a very voracious appetite. The hunger inside of it is apparently very, very extreme. It has to eat many, many times in order to satisfy that hunger, in order to stay alive. And when that happens, then so many animals and potential people then become its prey right after that. About the only time really that there was something associated with an encounter, and that was more along the lines of a loose one, happened to be with some men who happened to be there in James Bay. And when that happened, there were a party of surveyors who came across a Native American who was there with a canoe. What made it interesting to them was the fact that there was some type of hide that was greatly stretched out and covering the entirety of the canoe. They must have been mystified as to what that hide was. But then upon closer examination, that's when they found out that it was associated with this snow wasset. What led them to be mystified was the fact that there were no holes. No holes where usually there would be something along the lines of legs. But in this case, they couldn't find any. It was just perfectly stretched out between the entire canoe itself. And so that's when they inquired about it and found out what it truly was. The hide apparently is also very good when it comes to that type of material for a canoe. It's used as a way to make sure that the canoe stays in a safe position, like there's no holes, nothing else that's causing water to seep in, nothing along those lines. So the Native Americans were able to then successfully hunt for this snow wasset and then use its hide/fur for their own purposes. One interesting note on that too, there is a way to successfully trap the snow wasset. If you're in that area there where you have to hunt the snow wasset for whatever reason, you can apparently create a deadfall of sorts. Like you could have logs, about a dozen or so logs that are elevated above the snow, presumably hanging between some trees, something along those lines. And then when the snow wasset is right underneath those logs, you can then cause those logs to fall down all around its sides, presumably like in either a square or maybe even a circle, something along those lines, and then it not able to escape. It tries to burrow away under the snow, but it can't because the logs themselves have fallen into the ground, completely touching the ground all the way from the top of the snow to the bottom, and presumably there's no gaps in between these this area, like when it comes to these dozen logs or so. So that's how you are able to trap this creature, although again, you do so at great risk. But the only other thing to mention with regards to this lumberjack cryptid is the fact that if you want to stay safe from this creature, you can do so by either A, staying away from its environment. You're going to have lesser chance, obviously, of running into it. And another way of doing so is to stay away during the summertime. So if you happen to be in its area for some reason, it's better to do so during the winterland than it is during the summertime. I guess it's the fact that it maybe targets more humans during the summer than anything else. And then the other last things to mention is that the meat associated with the snow wasset is apparently very, very edible and safe to eat. One thing though that stood out that even seemed to me more like science fiction is the fact that a snow wasset can regrow itself even if it's just a skeleton. It essentially comes back to life afterwards. How that happens, I don't know. Why it's the only creature on Earth that can apparently do something like that, I'm not sure either. But that was one other bit of information that stood out. But that's pretty much it. That's everything associated with this snow wasset. If anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. Anybody there from the northern parts of the United States, the Great Lakes going into the Hudson Bay towards Canada, post them in the comments. See if you have any other experiences in terms of hearing this legend of the snow wasset. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care.